Welcome to Our Kids, the podcast hosted by three college buddies, Lisa, Reese, and Tracy, where we talk about all things art. In our season 2 premiere, we delve into We Live in Public, a 2009 documentary by Ondi Timoner, highlighting the life of .com entrepreneur and trailblazer Josh Harris.
Freedom over cycle stays the same.
Hey guys, welcome to season 2.
Welcome.
I can't stop eating nuts.
Hey, Drees. How's everyone doing? How's everyone's winter going?
It's been wintry, then
Yes.
not wintry, then wintry.
I feel you. I've been feeling unmotivated.
I've been hibernating and eating a lot of nuts and other things.
Dirty.
No, really. I really love nuts. I do stuff my face here and there. And I sleep a lot. But now
Like a bear.
I'm juggling 2 jobs. That's also different from last season.
It's a lot, man.
Yeah.
It is. But you're crushing it.
I think so.
I think so too. Definitely.
What a change. Just a couple months.
I know. It feels like a very different time frame. But we're here and we're ready and we're getting into the groove. We have a lot of awesome things in store for the season, and I'm sure we'll gear up and things will get better and better. We're excited.
All that I'm eating wasabi soy almonds, that kickback in the back of my nose just happened. So good.
I live for that feeling.
So
I love
good
that feeling.
So good and overwhelming at the same time.
Burns so good.
Yeah.
They have a mustard. It's called, pretty sure it's just called Better Than Mustard, but it's like a butter-based mustard with mustard powder, and it's the same sort of spice as wasabi. It's like all in your nose.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Sounds very good.
It's delish.
All right, so let's hop into today's episode. So for this episode, we're delving into We Live in Public, a 2009 documentary by Ondi Timoner, highlighting the life of .com entrepreneur and internet trailblazer Josh Harris. It's a super interesting documentary, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yes. And if anybody would like to watch it after listening to our discussion, or before listening to our discussion, maybe better, you can find it on Tubi. That's where I watched it.
Yeah, that's where I watched it. Tubi.
Where else? Anywhere else?
I believe Amazon.com. I know I bought myself a copy through Apple just because I've watched this a bunch of times and I love it. But you can Google it. And I know there's at least, what do you say?
You mean Prime Video?
Yeah, Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah.
But you can Google it, and there's at least 2 free versions of it out there. Tubi is definitely one of them. I forget the second one, but there's multiple ways to watch it, and it is. I've watched it at least 5 times over the past several years. I love this documentary, so I highly suggest it.
I feel like I need to rewatch it just because it was really intense, and I was like, I don't know that I'm absorbing everything that's happening right now. Well, yeah, it's really cool. And just a little bit of background for anybody who doesn't know who Josh Harris is. He is the founder of a couple of companies. One, Jupiter Research, which was a technology marketing research consulting firm. Pseudo, which was a live audio and video webcasting website. So Pseudo we're going to talk about today. Quiet, which is one of his projects we're going to talk about today. It was like an underground group living experiment that was recorded the entire time. And then another one we're going to be talking about was WeLiveInPublic.com. That was a 24-hour live stream in his home with his girlfriend, Tanya Corin. That was his girlfriend at the time of that making. And just for time frame reference, this was late 1990s into early 2000s. So quite a bit of time has passed since these, but you'll see why it's relevant today. And because we are talking so much about the documentary We Live in Public, by Ondi Timoner. Just a little bit about her. She's a film director, producer, and entrepreneur in her own right. And some of her films include documentaries Dig, We Live in Public, which we'll be talking about, and Join Us, for which she won 2 grand jury prizes at the Sundance Film Festival. She's also directed a bunch of music videos, so a really cool film director. And we'll have some links on our website to the documentary and also an interview with that director. So, Lisa, you want to take it away? Let's dive in.
Oh, yeah.
The internet's like this new human experience. At first, everybody's going to like it, but there will be a fundamental change in the human condition. One day, we're all going to wake up and realize that we're just servants. It's captured us.
It was genius because nobody had done it yet.
He was saying this is the way it's going to be. And he was right. I mean, he was right.
He was selling companies for $2 million. Well, we were all a bunch of kids getting paid $10 an hour to try and figure out HTML.
Josh was one of these incredible new idols everybody suddenly wanted to be.
I'm in a race to take CBS out of business.
He was always trying to advance the inevitable. This is going to happen. Let's try it now.
It is our function as artists to make the spectator see the world our way.
People want 15 minutes of fame every day. So we built a bunker and showed them the future.
Welcome to We Live in Public.
And he said, I want to put 32 cameras in the loft, wire to the internet, and I want us to be the first couple to live in public. It was viewable to the masses.
It's all gotta come out sooner or later. It's all gotta come out.
I just don't want to give him anything more.
Leave now. Out.
Josh was the puppet master.
I want to know why he's doing business in this manner.
Speaking to you virtually is how I know how to do this best.
Everything that he does is a precursor to something that is going to happen to all of us. Everything.
A few hundred years ago, the lions and tigers were kings of the jungle. And then one day they wound up in zoos. I suspect we're in the same trap.
So yeah, I love this documentary. I think it's super interesting because Josh Harris did this in the 90s, right? So like all of this took place in a time where we were nowhere near where we are today with internet and social media. So the first thing he did was Pseudo, which was, you know, he basically had the first like live streaming TV channel online. So he would throw these crazy parties in New York City and he would find these like so basically it was like an internet version of MTV VJs and stuff. And he would like, it was at the time of like the tech revolution in the 90s in New York, right? So all like the people who were in the scene there and partying and stuff, he would throw these parties, he would cast his VJs, and then he would have all these different channels through Pseudo. To this day, there's still nothing that's been done like this. So not only was it ahead of its time, but no one's even really touched that. I'd say the closest maybe to that is Vice, and what Vice does is still very different from this. So but it was very interesting because, you know, Josh is someone who is definitely into like technically and conceptually an artist. He ultimately is a tech person, and just very not your traditional way you would think of an artist. So he could think of concepts around business and programming and stuff and be really ahead of his time. But he was someone who was raised by TV and media, and that really played into his envisioning things. So, you know, everything he did with creating Pseudo is pretty amazing.
Pseudo right now, as we sit here, is the first internet television network ever.
Little Wing, who is a new viewer. Pappy is a new viewer. We got some new people out there.
Oh boy, word's getting around.
So you're watching video and the chat going on at the same time.
He started mixing those mediums in a way that people didn't understand. He took the approach of, assume it's going to work, assume it's going to happen. And if you take the assumption it's going to happen and you just race after that inevitability, you'll get there before everybody else.
That was when I realized that the internet was going to become the replacement for radio, for TV. Just knew it right then and there. You could see it.
You know, I think sort of amazing to me that one, no one talks about this, no one talks about him, and no one has even tried to replicate what he's done, which I think there's so much room for it. I think we're heading in that direction, like we've talked about in previous episodes, where you know, one of the new waves we think social media is going is that like brands are creating their own lifestyle networks, right? Like, you know, people are going to start making their own networks and streaming their own media. I'm surprised more of that hasn't happened by now. And I think that he is the ultimate example of someone who did it way before it was ever a thing. And I think proper credit should be given to him for just the vision he had around that and the money he generated. I mean, like, and this sounds so obscure, but in the New York City scene at the time, like you had some of the biggest magazines around doing profiles on him. And like, I'm trying to think of the one they featured in there, that spread where he was dressed as Lovey. Do you remember?
I think it was Esquire.
And then there was definitely plenty of them, but and the spreads were just like visually beautiful. I mean, and people really knew who this guy was. You know, he was at the head of the scene. And if you're around then during the .com era of things booming, like there was so much money to be made, and he was really at the forefront of that. So at the time, he was a very, very big name.
If you know anything at all about the internet, you know you can send emails to your friends. That's the 20th century. In other words, yesterday. The new stuff is percolating out of a bunch of old buildings in downtown Manhattan. And the people who work there call themselves the .com kids. They're cool, they're hip, they become very rich, and they're still very young.
Such staggering amounts of money are being made by people who are so young.
Get used to it. It's the future. I remember one time going up to the Harvard Business School and speaking to that class. The piece of advice I gave them was take whatever money you have left that you haven't paid Harvard for your tuition and leave school tomorrow and start an internet company.
So yeah, and then from there, which was even more amazing, was he went on to do a project with that money. I think he sold Pseudo and then went to go do this. He did a project called Quietly We Live in Public, or Quiet We Live in Public, and he did this underground, he basically created this underground bunker in New York City, and he created all these so basically like Big Brother, years ahead of its time.
He called me to document his next project, referring to it as cultural history, but something stood out to me as odd. He also called it an experiment.
The name of the experiment is Quiet We Live in Public.
Created all these bunker sleep spaces, and he put cameras into each of them. He had these decked out bathrooms with cameras everywhere, and then he had free booze and buffets, and then they had an artillery area, an ammunition area, and then they had interview areas, and they casted people to come in and live there for, I forgot how many days it was, maybe 30 days, and they were going to document the whole thing.
We're going to record Stasi-type intelligence of what people are doing.
We start off with very basic questions, and then we go into the groups: political, religious, psychological, emotional, sexual. And we'll have files on them on such things as how the drug test came out, whether they liked their mother better or their father, or were in jail for any political activities.
To be a citizen of Quiet, you had to really give up a lot. There was a tremendous fascist overtone to the whole thing.
If you wanted to be involved, you had to be interrogated. And then you get issued a uniform.
Once you're in, you're not allowed to go out. Literally, you cannot leave the premises again.
We've got to make sure there's discipline in the ranks.
His vision was, you're going to wear my outfit, you're going to sleep where I tell you to sleep, you're going to eat where I tell you to eat, and you're going to exist here, and I'm going to film every part of it, from you hanging out, to you sleeping, to you eating, to you showering, to you shitting.
Don't bring your money with you. Everything is free, except the video that we capture of you. That we own.
You got all food, booze, but everything was recorded 24/7, whether it be showering, you having sex, you shooting guns. And it was you could tell this was pre 9/11 just for the pure fact that it was ammunition and artillery ranges underground. And it's nuts to see that footage and nuts to see what they did. It eventually got broken up on New Year's Eve, 1999. So Y2K, the night of Y2K, that's when the cops came in and broke it up.
Basically, all hell broke loose.
He's gonna wind up in jail.
But you have like the director of PS MoMA in this documentary that was at this event, and there was, I'm not sure how they did it, but there was like kids running around, like a little child running around. It's just nutty that this was a thing and they got away with it, and it was just like very ahead of its time. And I mean, they had this like interrogation room where they would like ask people lots of personal questions about their childhood and their background and their secrets, and then like it got really wild really quick. So yeah, I just like, it's sort of amazing to me that not more people don't talk about him and what he's done, and just sort of like, you could see that this man really could tell what was going to come with the future of social media and our fascination with celebrity and our image and having our 15 minutes of fame.
Down here, we're building a capsule hotel to find out what the internet is going to look like when it takes over. You get the TV here, right? And you can see all these other people.
I just thought if you could play off of that Warhol kind of thing and recreate the factory.
No offense, I'm a little sensitive on the topic, but it's kind of been done. There's a new boy in town, it's called Technology.
Yeah.
It's
a girl, but that's okay.
Yeah, all right.
And then after that, him and his girlfriend decided to live stream their relationship from home. So like they had a video at home, and 24/7 you would just see live footage and people being able to chat with them. And so everything from going to the bathroom to having sex to having arguments and this and that, and their relationship devolved over that time until eventually they broke up.
Welcome to We Live in Public. And he said, I want to put 32 cameras in the loft, wire to the internet, and I want us to be the first couple to live in public. It was viewable to the masses.
There was the giddy first month.
There was all this press and hype, and they're going to conceive in public.
Get a fucking porn star and have sex all over the house in public.
It wasn't just We Live in Public. He was going down financially.
I need to tell you, you got a negative balance in your checking account.
Okay, bye.
It's all gotta come out sooner or later. It's all gotta come out.
And then the last couple of weeks or days, it was just him while he was going under at the time too, financially, and like losing his money. It was like a pretty crazy spiral. And just like very raw portrayal of things. So the whole storyline in general, he's a very interesting character. I mean, he's someone that references, pretty much being raised by the TV and his mom never being around and always having to fend for himself, and that like he always had an easier time relating to TV shows and characters. And he had this alter ego named Lovey that was like this like really weird clown that he would dress up as sometimes for his interviews. And that was supposed to be like the character from Gilligan's Island. I forget her name, but it was sort of like part her, part his mom. Like it's interesting. And he would like do these like big parties with big brands in Manhattan and to raise money for his companies, and he would come dressed up as that clown, and it was just a very, very outrageous time. So yeah, that's like the synopsis of it all. What did you guys think when you saw it?
I loved it. I thought it was really cool. I think what was really indicative of the fact that it was ahead of its time, it needs a resurgence, or like it needs to come back, is like it was like during a time where we didn't have broadband internet, so like things were so slow that it would be like freeze framing a lot. So that really sucks, because like it was like really cool, like everything that he was doing, and it makes sense now, like what he was doing. But for the technology that we had, it just kind of, it couldn't hit mainstream enough, like, so now it would be able to hit mainstream. I mean, we have broadband on our cell phones. It's like amazing. So I don't know, it really needs like another chance.
I know it's interesting to think that, like, because his company under pseudo made a lot of money, right? So it's crazy to me that it did as well as it did. And I don't even fully understand it considering how bad technology was back then and how it must have been very, buffery and just like streaming was horrendous back then. But his casting he did, the concepts behind his shows, the people, like all of it was super, super interesting. It just like the idea of watching that online almost sounds like not appealing because you'd bear like it's not like truly the way we experience stuff like that now,
I
but
think looking backwards, it seems insufferable, but I mean, we were those people and we'd wait 5 minutes for our photo to load just to see it. So I
it's
think,
true.
Yeah,
I think the
and sometimes
expectation.
if it like preloads or something, then maybe you could like rewind it and then like let it play again from the beginning or something.
I feel like we need
I
a
figured it out.
retrospective that we can go and have the level of like technology and internet and experience it the way it was originally put out. That would be kind of a mind trip.
On like 14K modems.
That's a really good thought. I'm surprised someone hasn't done some art exhibit of like having today's teenagers experience what internet was like for us back then and like replaying some of that stuff in portals and in a gallery room. And actually, it's a very good idea, Tracy.
How loud the dial-up was. I remember, try to like, I just remember having like sleepovers with my friends, and we're like, let's go on AIM, and then it's like, we're gonna wake our parents because the dial-up's so loud, and you'd have to put like pillows next to the modem to like buffer the noise. So wasn't this just like beep 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 beep, this loud announcement that somebody was trying to get online. I think that'd be cool. Overall, let's see. Like I said before, I think I'd probably rewatch it because I feel like there was so much going on throughout it and kind of towards the end, that I want to pay a little bit more attention. But I think one, it was really amazing that he successfully created these projects. I think the timing was perfect because nobody had done anything like that before. I don't think he had no limitations, right? So he was just like, let's do this really crazy thing that nobody's ever thought of, and there's no restrictions around. So he was like all out, and everybody was on board. Also the fact that they kind of put out specifically for Quiet, they like put out this call, and people came and had to be interviewed to be welcomed into the experiment. I do think that was really smart. It was kind of like a pre-screening. And then the fact that like they pre-screen these people to have this like really nice experience, but then he threw in the interrogation and he was like, let's see how we can fuck with these people and like really mix things up. So yeah, that was, I didn't see that coming. That was like a true social experiment. And then for him to take what he learned from that and then put himself as the center of attention with his girlfriend in kind of that next stage was very interesting. And to think that we now on social media, like I think at one point in the documentary, he was talking about the cameras and the screens and all the little cubbies that everybody got to sleep in, and you could like tune into that person's channel. That's what we have now. Like our social media, that is somebody tuning into our channel now. So really, we are doing exactly what he was kind of trying to create all in one space, but like that's kind of how we're living right now. Like if you want to tune into somebody's life, you just go to their Instagram channel or go to their TikTok page or whatever. Obviously it's curated and it's not 24/7 live streamed, but I do think it's like a similar sort of idea of just I want to see what that person's doing. So and then they can see what I'm doing. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's this uber fascination into like other people's lives and the psychology and the 15 minutes of fame and giving up privacy and there's a lot of implications around it. And I think so much of it had to do with psychology, right? You know, everything from just the social experiment of it all, and how everyone's interactions with each other devolved over time. And then because the documentary very much portrayed him as someone who is like this puppet master for these people, you know, underground, and how like he fed them all this booze and ammunition, which was nuts to me. You know, and it really could have gone left if that had gone on for a little bit longer. And you know, some people were cracking towards the end for sure, but then he put himself in that hot seat, like Tracy said too, and he made sure. So it wasn't just about controlling other people and manipulating them and taking their image, but you could tell he truly was curious about the role of like being watched like that, and how we record our lives and these social experiments, because he not only wanted to view people that way, but then he was willing to put himself in that ultra vulnerable position too, you know. So for him, I think he was truly trying to understand people and the human condition and our role in the world and society and how we interact with others. But I think too, you know, it's amazing to me that he even had the foresight and the genius to understand how, let alone the fact that it was ahead of his time and there was no like restrictions around what he could do. Like the fact that he saw monetary options here, and the fact that he, in a field where no business was coming yet and there was no way to make money off of this stuff, it's not even just like delving into something before it's been carved out. It's creating a whole new avenue for creating money and business where it hasn't been done before. It was true insight, I think, on a very deep level of what was to come, and understanding what was going to happen with internet and video and media. And I don't think a lot of people, even like, you know, like Steve Jobs and Apple and those that came ahead and built these things, like that was one facet of what was to come. I think he saw those things and took it even further, because like really no one at the time was predicting or could have predicted our fascination with recording ourselves, and then all of us watching it, or there being these apps. And he really, a lot of the documentary talked about his insights on that, and how, you know, our image and our privacy and our videos were all going to be commodities down the line, and they are now. You know, I mean, just think about where we were 10 years ago, before influences were a thing, and like no one would have guessed that that would be a career for people, or a way to make money, or a way that businesses want to sell their product just through influencers, you know. And this was someone 10 years even before that saw that coming and heading in that direction. So it really is amazing in terms of someone who, you know, could see ahead of what was coming before it made sense to anyone. Like he looked crazy to a lot of people. He was way ahead of his time, way ahead of his time. And I don't think that gets discussed enough, because that is a very big deal to me. And I think every time I watch this documentary, there's a new facet I pull from it, something new I glean from it. There's just so much to dissect in terms of like his relationship to other people, how his biggest bonds were with TV characters, and that's how he related to other people around him, how that was a reflection on the relationship he had with his own mother, because his mom never really raised him, so he never quite learned how to connect with people properly. He was also like a really sickly boy, which was like played into the whole dynamics with him and his brothers. It's a whole thing. But there's just a lot. You can go back and watch it every time, and there's something new I always pull from it. It's very interesting to me.
And I also think it's yeah, just thinking about like reality TV, right? So although a lot of reality TV is somewhat scripted, just the fact that we consume so much reality TV, and again, that fascination with other people and how other people live their lives, and then how it reflects on how we live our lives if we choose to let it like influence how we live our lives, the things we do, the things we buy, how we dress, you know, our standards we set for ourselves. It's really wild. And I think those are all the things that he was exploring, and now I think we're in a time where we're just exploiting that fascination. and people are more like, back then I think it was a little more like taboo to talk about something like that. Like, it wasn't as open. The fact of like not having privacy was like unimaginable, and now everything we do is monitored and watched and recorded, and there is like no sort of privacy anymore, and we've all just kind of like willy-nilly given that up and accepted that that's our reality now. Yeah.
I think I always think about what this stuff is, that back then the idea of celebrity or someone we pedestaled, right? I mean, they had a lot more control of the image they put out to other people. So the image we portrayed of them, the snippets we saw of their lives, we really thought that was like all of them or who they were, right? But since we've had social media, and even like none of us have some true online persona of the three of us, right? But even just the little bit we've done, we know the ways, and anyone who does this stuff knows that even no matter how honest you are and stuff, you're still curating what gets put out there, right? So you start to see in real time the way people who seem like they have a perfect life online, like that could be curated. And like, so it's like, I know how my life might look to others on the outside, but then I know what's going on behind closed doors that they don't see. And that's one of the biggest things I've realized over the past few years, is just like, if that's how it is for me, I know that's what it's like for most other people, right? And I think that's where we've had that crossover these days, with more people talking about the harder parts of life or the really raw things, because for a little bit it created this heightened aspect of people like striving for that curated perfection when none of it that's really even real, And I think it's interesting to me to really think like, so now we all know that when we look at someone's perfect life, odds are it's curated and it's not perfect at all. But 20 years ago, when they would see some celebrity and something where you'd only see snippets of them in a magazine or on TV and stuff, and you really would only see what was curated, they believed that those people were that pedestaled version they envisioned them as. And I think we've broken down that wall a lot through the idea of internet and social media. And it's made the human experience a little bit different, and our relationship to others, and what it is to be human and raw, and that there's no such thing as perfect. Even if it's this idealized person out there that seems so perfect, everyone has like those dark, raw parts to themselves. And that's sort of what I see that's coming out of social media these days. I mean, I know not everyone goes with that and takes it there. Some people really still try to portray a perfect brand, but I think you see just as much people like cracking through the internet or just showing more raw aspects of their life. And to me, it really makes me realize that like no one's perfect, and we never fully understand what's going on the other side. No matter how good it looks, someone has something just as hard going on in their life behind closed doors.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked how for both of his projects, I feel like there's parallels to kind of like what we have going on right now in our everyday. And maybe I know a little bit more stuff than you chicas, because because I'm a slut. No.
Do tell. Go on.
I was just thinking, so like he has, okay, so for like the quiet we live in public, it kind of reminds me of sleep streaming, which is like this new trend. I don't even know, maybe you want to look it up, Tracy, if you haven't heard of it. Sleep streaming, like I don't know that much about it, but apparently it's like these influencers that are like sleeping and people like watch them sleeping, and that's like a thing.
There's
And
also a bar one, but that's a little older, where there were bars that would allow you to watch through their cameras, so you could like see everybody at the bar. I think it was just called Bar TV. And you could like hop between bars. Anyways, keep going.
That's a hysterical and actually very smart idea, because I just think about my years bartending and how like we, especially at Skewers, we used to joke regularly about how good it would be. Like I always had said that I would refuse to agree to this, but how Skewers would have made the perfect reality TV show. And everyone used to regularly, even the owners joked about how like this would, our staff and the story of there would make the best reality TV show, because the craziest shit would happen every night, like crazy. And so that is a brilliant idea. I mean, like, I don't think I could ever agree to being on reality TV, but I do like the idea of watching that experience online. So
Yes, it reminds me of like, yeah, sleep streaming and kind of like OnlyFans or something like that, or like I guess a free version of OnlyFans would be not even a free version, but like chat roulette. So like chat roulette is like a website. Oh, okay, so you know what it is. But like chat roulette is like this website where it's like you scroll through all of the like you like at random like browse through the people that are online, I guess, basically, and you could like video chat with them. So I guess that kind of reminds me of like Quiet We Live in Public, how everybody had their own television screens that you could like tune into, like to see like their own little bunkery bunk bed cubbies or whatever. And like, yeah, I guess there are people like having sex like there or whatever. Like people are just living their lives or whatever, which is cool. Like going to the bathroom, I thought that was really interesting that people would be so free to go to the bathroom in public. But he put cameras in his toilet. I thought that was strange. But I also kind of think what was interesting about that is that in the future now, so now talking about We Live in Public, him and his girlfriend's project or whatever, I feel like there was like cameras everywhere, and we have cameras everywhere, but it's kind of not just because we broadcast some of our stuff. Like it's also because cameras are like sensors, and they're kind of like for Amazon or something to like tell you what to buy, or like tell you when to like resupply something, or like tell you if something's like, I don't know, security threat or security issue. So I don't know, like having it in your toilet, that could be like a health reason. Having it, you know, in your kitchen, that could be like a food supply reason or something. So there was like kind of like, I don't know, I just feel like we were saying before, he was like ahead of his time. And I also kind of feel like when people were chiming in via chat, like saying things about his life to him and his girlfriend, like saying like what they should do or what they shouldn't do, it reminds me of, I forget what you call it, but it's sort of like this trend that was happening online where like you tell people what to do and they do it and they like say it and they act like a robot, and it's like that was like a trend for a while. Do you remember what I'm
Yeah,
talking
on
about?
TikTok, you can be, it's where they act like one of the people in the video games, and then they like, send little
like
things.
a sim.
Yeah, almost like a sim.
Yeah, you're like a sim and people like send you like money or something like that.
I mean,
Can you imagine
like
people like
real time.
what to buy and everything? Like people are just telling you like what to do. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, like what shirt should I wear today?
But some people are
And I
making
did
like
that earlier when I was like, Lisa, what color shirt? And you're like, so we already do that.
Yeah, we are already doing that. Yeah.
some people are just making money off of doing it that way. But I mean, there's a million different offshoots of what came out of that, you know. Just the internet has done some crazy things and people have created some crazy stuff out of that. It's just sort of amazing because he is the first at the beginning of it. You know, like everything else came out of that offshoot, whether people realize it or not. And I think that's the thing that fascinates me, is that everything we're into now is birthed from that. It's just that most people don't realize that this was the first person to kind of do it. So, you know, like, I mean, TV show Big Brother, like that is pretty much a replica of his Quiet project. You know, it's just a TV show version of that. Same with Real World, you know, MTV Real World. Same thing.
I think Big Brother is still on.
It is still on. Yeah.
As well.
I mean, Real World's got to still be on, right?
I don't think so, but every now and again, I think they do reunions, but I don't think they're still casting for it. But Big Brother, they do.
Yeah.
So,
World.
all of that too. I think it's interesting to think about what's to come. You know, I think I always find it interesting and fascinating, right? Because we take people like him or other people who were able to see years ahead of the time, but usually we're discussing them after the things that they projected into the future have come true, right? So it's easy for us to sit here and look at him now after everything he did years ahead of his time have come to fruition. But can you really think about and imagine what it must have been like to be him back then when no one understood the internet, no one understood streaming and what was to come, and how crazy a lot of this must have seemed and how crazy he must have looked. And I think that's the same with celebrity in general and just oftentimes how we react with visionaries, because it's easy to see the genius of them after the things they've projected have come true. But if you're around them at the time that they're predicting these things or doing the work surrounding this, but the times haven't changed with it, I imagine there's a lot of friction in their lives, because I do think that for these people to be able to see ahead and to predict stuff, there's a certain level of I imagine that vision usually comes from difficulty in some way, shape, or form. I don't have like a full formula formed in my head into like what it is and what connects all these people together. But usually for people to project this stuff or to have these like visions of what's to come, I imagine that it has something to do with the fact that they don't like being involved in the present that much, which is why they're always thinking ahead and they can have that kind of visionary vision. So like it's great for us to pedestal these people and glorify them now, but I imagine the people that surround them at the time that they're predicting stuff, they look pretty crazy. I imagine that like they have to have a very strong constitution and belief in themselves to even proceed forward with those visions and then make a business out of it or make art out of it or make work out of it. And I think I find it interesting sometimes to stop and think about like, what does that really mean? You know, like, because I think on the day to day, whenever we meet anyone around us that like is thinking ahead of themselves or ahead of their time, like we tend to just kind of write them off as a little bit crazy, or they seem ridiculous, or they're too idealistic, or whatever that is, when really like to create change, to usher in something new, you have to be able to have that type of vision, and it's not going to look right to most of the people surrounding you. So I think it's interesting to watch what he did and to think about what it must have been like to work for him, to work with him, to be around him, to even see, you know, the spreads of him in magazines at the time. You know, like I think about the conversations that people must have been having about him, how he's crazy, how he's this, how he's that. Meanwhile, he's making all this money and carving a path for what was to come in the future, you know? So I think that's interesting, because I do think we're heading at a time now where a lot of tech is about to change, and a lot of the way business is run and the way art and innovation, like I think there's going to be a big change in innovation going forward. And I think that I guess I find it so interesting now because I think the new Josh Harrises are about to come up and sprout, right? And what is our reactions to them going to be as we see them show up in the world? You know, can we spot that?
I was just doing a little digging. So he is still puttering away. Most recently, he was a contributor to the Cam Life exhibition at Museum of Sex in New York City, and so that exhibit is an introduction of the webcam culture.
Okay, what I was talking about.
Yeah, so that was in 2019. You have to read. I think the exhibition closed in 2020, kind of right when COVID was coming around and everything was closing down. But you know, he's still in some mind, people, you know, are aware of him, I think, in their networks, and they still see him as
relevant.
Yeah, relevant.
Like a pioneer,
yeah.
I think one thing to mention is that keep in mind that I'm not sure if we said this earlier, but the documentary we're referencing was done in 2009. So that was 15 years ago. So keep in mind that a large amount of time has passed even since this documentary has come out. So like Tracy had said that she saw about him doing work on these museum exhibits and stuff, but there isn't like a large amount of information out there in terms of what he's currently up to. But I suspect that someone like him is never gone for long. And I imagine another project with him is going to come up. And, you know, like we're referencing, you know, a large amount of time and attention was put in through the documentary to discuss his past and where he was currently at the time. There's not a lot of resources out there discussing him, but something tells me that he's going to come back into the fray, because someone with a mind like that, someone who can see that far ahead into the future and really does have a very visionary brain. I can't see him being gone for long. In fact, this is finally the time period for him to thrive. Like the rest of society's catching up with the vision he had 20 something years ago. So, and I think people would be even more ready for him now. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in a big way.
Yeah, I think in the end of the documentary, he did talk about trying to work on some new projects, but how his reputation preceded him, and people just saw that as a huge negative when he was trying to create these new connections and networks. Whereas now, I feel like this is the perfect time for him to come back to make a big splash with something new, because people would love to partner with somebody like him, regardless of the trouble that he may have had in the past.
Yeah, because in the documentary, they talk about I think it was the mid 20 teens, he tried to come back with another business, but like Tracy was just saying, his past kind of bit him in the butt when he was trying to look for investors, because, he came up at a time where excess and having these personas was valuable for raising money and cool for a business to have. But in the 2010s, that was post the economic decline, and when the economy took a dive, people are being more conservative, right? So they weren't going to risk anything on him. We've moved beyond that now. We're going back into arena where we're heading into things like that don't matter as much. Not to mention his genius has been proven. He's more than proven that he has the ability to see beyond his years and predict certain things. So absolutely, I think it'd be the perfect time for him to come back. And I do think it's interesting to see how excess in certain decades is accepted, or being frivolous or being eccentric is embraced, but then come back 10 years later and that could work against you. But also wait another 10 years and that can work to your benefit again. So I think that's interesting to think about in terms of the implication of any of our careers and futures and how we move through the world, or how we move as artists.
I wonder what his thoughts around artificial intelligence.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes, that's a very good question.
With AI, yeah, totally.
Oh man, I could only imagine. I bet you he would have some really interesting ideas about even what to do with AI. I bet you he's for AI, but I think he seems like he's balanced out a little bit and found a little bit more peace and anonymity since he finished those projects. But something tells me if you have that much love for media, that you created what you created, that undying love is always going to be there. So I bet you he'd be just as equally fascinated by AI now, and have some interesting input into what can be done with it,
Yeah. Josh Harris, if you're out there listening, we'd love to interview you.
Oh my God, I would love to talk to you. I have so many questions for you.
Do you think he's still in Africa? I can't believe he learned.
It's if you scour the Wikipedia page, it says he resides in Vegas. So
yeah, he probably made his way back into the US. Because like I said, that documentary came out in 2009. So back around 2008 was when he was living in Africa. I'm sure he's back by now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
very cool. Lisa, that was thank you so much. An eye-opening documentary for sure. It was so cool. I never heard about it before.
Yeah, man. I was so stoked since the first time I watched it to talk about it with you guys, because it just really breaks me open and inspires me in a lot of ways. And he just really took an idea and played it out in a few different ways, and I find that so interesting. And I think you guys have heard me go on and on about it before, I think we're very much at that time period right now where the same thing's about to happen, right? So I like to look at the visionaries of the past, and I like to think about what's to come. And there's no one I better to talk about this stuff with than the two of you. So I've been dying to discuss this with both of y'all. So do you know who I would love to talk about this? Hopefully maybe he'll hear this more than anyone. I would really love to hear what Eric and Mark would have to say about this. I would love for them to watch this documentary and then to break this open with the two of them and get their ideas, because I kind of see the two of them in that light. So I feel like they would have some interesting reactions to him and some ideas on what's to come.
I feel like they would be a part of the Bunker Project.
They absolutely would. I could have very easily seen them creating something similar to what he did. So, maybe that'll be a future discussion with them.
Yeah. Wonderful. What a great discussion.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So yeah, we'll see what's to come, I think we're heading in a time now where everything's just about to start to change in terms of innovation. Just to like take things into an astrology realm for a second, like Pluto is just entering Aquarius, back into Aquarius as of this week, and that changes every 20 years, and that usually dictates a lot of stuff around things like media and innovation and like larger trends, right? So like Aquarian ideas are going to be the norm over the next 20 years, and we're just starting to dip our toes into them. So, you know, I say pay attention, stay tuned, see what's to come, because everything's about to change again. That's my prediction.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Glad to have y'all back for season 2.
Yeah. Welcome to season 2.
We're just getting started.
We are changing things up a little bit, so our frequency will be changing. Once a month. We're working on some other projects, so trying to spread our time around wisely.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Be patient with us. Other awesome things are coming. We're just, you know, we're finding our balance, but some exciting things are in the works. So just hang in there, and they're coming.
Totally.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, y'all.
Ciao.
See you next time. Cut.
Cool. All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Art Kids. For credits, resources, and information on our guests, visit the Art Kids website at artkidspodcast.com. That's Art Kids with a Z. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe on all your favorite platforms. Ciao.
Yeah.
Stays the same.